The morning sun painted golden streaks across the windows of Kensington Palace as 8-year-old Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana sat at her breakfast table, completely unaware that this day would mark a turning point in royal history. Her dark blonde hair was neatly brushed, held back with a simple blue headband that matched her school uniform. She nibbled on her toast with strawberry jam, while her mother, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, reviewed the day's schedule with their private secretary. Charlotte had always been different from her older brother George and younger brother Louis. While George was naturally reserved and serious, often overwhelmed by the weight of his future role as king, Charlotte possessed an infectious confidence that seemed to light up every room she entered. Louis, being the youngest, was still learning the ropes of royal etiquette, but Charlotte had mastered the delicate balance between being a normal child and understanding her royal responsibilities. The palace staff had grown accustomed to Charlotte's curious nature. She would often peek around corners during important meetings, not out of mischief, but from genuine interest in the workings of the monarchy. The housekeepers would find her practicing her curtsy in the hallways, or catch her studying family portraits, asking detailed questions about distant relatives and their roles in history. Her parents, Prince William and Catherine, had worked tirelessly to provide their children with as normal a childhood as possible while preparing them for their future roles. They enrolled them in regular schools, encouraged friendships with children from all backgrounds, and made sure they understood the importance of service to others. Charlotte, however, seemed to absorb these lessons more naturally than her brothers. The breakfast routine was always the same. Charlotte would finish her meal, gather her school bag, and join her brothers for the short journey to Lambeth School. But today felt different. There was an unusual energy in the palace corridors, with staff members moving with more purpose than usual. Charlotte noticed her mother checking her phone more frequently, and there were hushed conversations between the adults that stopped whenever she entered the room. During her geography lesson that morning, Charlotte's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, was explaining about different countries and their cultures when Charlotte raised her hand with an unexpected question. She wanted to know about diplomatic protocols and how countries communicated with each other. Her classmates giggled at what seemed like an unusually grown-up question for an 8-year-old, but Mrs. Henderson was impressed by Charlotte's genuine curiosity about international relations. At lunch, Charlotte sat with her best friend Emma, sharing stories about their families. Emma's father worked as a diplomat for the British Foreign Office, and she often shared interesting tales about meeting people from different countries. Charlotte listened intently, asking questions about how diplomats greeted each other and whether there were special rules for different cultures. The afternoon brought an unexpected phone call to the palace. Catherine received news that would change their evening plans entirely. The Japanese ambassador to the United Kingdom, along with his family, would be making an impromptu visit to discuss cultural exchange programs between British and Japanese youth organizations. What made this visit particularly significant was that the ambassador's daughter, Yuki, was exactly Charlotte's age and would be accompanying her father. As Charlotte returned from school that afternoon, she noticed the increased activity around the palace. Flowers were being arranged in the main reception rooms, and the finest china was being prepared for afternoon tea. Her curiosity piqued when she saw her mother's lady-in-waiting selecting a particularly elegant dress for the evening's events. Catherine sat down with Charlotte in her private sitting room, explaining the importance of the upcoming visit. She told her daughter that this wasn't just a formal diplomatic meeting, but an opportunity to build bridges between two cultures through the genuine interaction of young people. Charlotte's eyes sparkled with excitement as she realized she would be representing not just her family, but her entire country in welcoming their Japanese guests. The weight of this responsibility didn't frighten Charlotte. Instead, it energized her. She spent the remaining afternoon hours before the visit researching Japanese customs on her tablet, practicing different ways of bowing, and even learning a few basic Japanese phrases. Her determination to make a good impression was evident to everyone around her. As evening approached, Charlotte stood before her mirror while Catherine helped her into a beautiful navy blue dress with delicate white trim. The dress was formal enough for the occasion, but still appropriate for a young girl. Charlotte's natural grace was enhanced by her genuine enthusiasm for the meeting ahead. The stage was set for what would become one of the most memorable moments in recent royal history. Charlotte had no way of knowing that her natural charm and diplomatic instincts were about to create a moment that would be talked about for years to come, setting a new standard for how young royals could contribute meaningfully to international relations. The ornate reception room at Kensington Palace had been transformed into a perfect setting for cross-cultural diplomacy. Fresh white roses and delicate cherry blossom branches created an elegant backdrop that honored both British and Japanese aesthetics. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, casting a warm glow over the carefully arranged furniture and creating an atmosphere of warmth and welcome. Charlotte stood beside her parents as they waited for their guests to arrive. Her small hands were clasped behind her back, a habit she had developed when nervous but excited. She had been practicing her greeting all afternoon, alternating between a traditional curtsy and the respectful bow she had seen in videos about Japanese culture. Her mind raced with questions she wanted to ask Yuki about life in Japan, but she also understood the importance of following proper protocol. The sound of cars arriving in the courtyard signaled the beginning of this historic meeting. Through the window, Charlotte could see the official vehicles pulling up to the palace entrance. Her heart beat faster with anticipation, but her face maintained the composed expression she had been taught was appropriate for formal occasions. Catherine noticed her daughter's slight nervousness and gave her an encouraging smile that immediately boosted Charlotte's confidence. Ambassador Tanaka stepped out of the lead vehicle, followed by his wife and their daughter Yuki. Even from a distance, Charlotte could see that Yuki was similarly dressed in formal attire, wearing a beautiful dress that seemed to blend traditional Japanese elements with modern style. The two girls were about to meet for the first time, completely unaware that their interaction would soon capture the attention of royal watchers around the world. As the Japanese delegation was escorted through the palace corridors, Charlotte listened to the approaching footsteps with growing excitement. She had learned that Yuki spoke excellent English, having lived in London for 2 years while her father served in his diplomatic role. This knowledge put Charlotte at ease, knowing that language wouldn't be a barrier to their friendship. The doors to the reception room opened, and the formal introductions began. Prince William stepped forward first, greeting Ambassador Tanaka with the warm professionalism that had made him respected in diplomatic circles. Catherine followed, welcoming Mrs. Tanaka with genuine warmth while complimenting her elegant traditional dress. The adults exchanged pleasantries about the beautiful spring weather and their hopes for strengthening cultural ties between their nations. Then came the moment everyone had been anticipating. Charlotte was formally introduced to Yuki, and the two 8-year-olds found themselves face to face for the first time. Yuki was slightly shorter than Charlotte, with long black hair styled in a neat bun and kind eyes that reflected both intelligence and shyness. She wore a dress that beautifully incorporated subtle Japanese design elements, making her appear both dignified and approachable. The adults watched with interest as the two girls sized each other up. There was a moment of silence that seemed to stretch longer than it actually was, as both children remembered their training in proper etiquette, while also feeling the natural curiosity that comes with meeting someone new from a different culture. Charlotte made the first move, offering a gentle curtsy while maintaining eye contact with Yuki. Her greeting was clear and confident, welcoming Yuki to Kensington Palace and expressing her happiness at meeting her. Yuki responded with a graceful bow, thanking Charlotte for the welcome and expressing her own excitement about visiting the palace. What happened next surprised everyone in the room. Instead of maintaining the formal distance that protocol might have suggested, Charlotte stepped forward and offered her hand to Yuki in the most natural way possible. It wasn't a calculated diplomatic gesture or something she had been taught to do in this specific situation. It was simply the genuine action of a friendly child who wanted to make another child feel welcome and comfortable. Yuki's face lit up with surprise and delight as she reached out to take Charlotte's offered hand. The handshake that followed was warm, genuine, and lasted just the right amount of time to convey real friendship without appearing staged. In that simple gesture, two children had managed to bridge cultural differences and create a moment of authentic human connection. The adults in the room recognized immediately that they were witnessing something special. Ambassador Tanaka's formal expression softened into a genuine smile as he watched his daughter's obvious delight in meeting Charlotte. Prince William and Catherine exchanged a quick glance of pride and relief, knowing that their daughter had handled the situation with exactly the kind of natural grace they had hoped to see. Mrs. Tanaka whispered something in Japanese to her husband, and Charlotte caught the word for beautiful that she had learned during her afternoon research. She blushed slightly, but maintained her composure, understanding instinctively that she had made a positive impression on their guests. The ice had been broken in the most natural way possible. What followed was an afternoon of genuine conversation between two families who discovered they had more in common than their different backgrounds might have suggested. Charlotte and Yuki found themselves sitting together on a small sofa, chatting about their schools, their favorite subjects, and their shared love of horses and art. As tea was served, the two girls continued their animated conversation, switching effortlessly between topics that ranged from their favorite books to the differences between British and Japanese sweets. Their parents watched with growing amazement as the formal diplomatic meeting transformed into a warm family gathering, all because of the natural connection their daughters had established. The afternoon tea had transformed from a formal diplomatic meeting into something much more meaningful and personal. Charlotte and Yuki sat side by side on the elegant sofa, their initial shyness completely forgotten as they discovered the joy of cross-cultural friendship. Their conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic, with each girl eager to learn about the other's world. Charlotte was fascinated to learn that Yuki practiced traditional Japanese calligraphy and could write her name in beautiful characters that looked like art to Charlotte's eyes. In return, Charlotte shared her love of horseback riding and her secret dream of becoming an equestrian champion, something she rarely discussed outside her immediate family. The two girls found common ground in their shared love of animals, with Yuki describing her pet rabbit in Tokyo and Charlotte talking about the palace corgis who were considered part of the extended royal family. Ambassador Tanaka watched his daughter with growing pride as she effortlessly switched between English and Japanese, occasionally translating interesting phrases for Charlotte, who listened with genuine fascination. The ambassador had attended countless diplomatic functions throughout his career, but he had never seen cultural exchange happen so naturally and effectively as it was happening right before his eyes. Prince William found himself genuinely impressed by both girls. Charlotte's natural curiosity and respectful questions about Japanese culture demonstrated a maturity beyond her years, while Yuki's confidence and openness showed that she had inherited her father's diplomatic skills. The two children were unconsciously demonstrating that friendship and understanding could transcend cultural boundaries when approached with genuine interest and respect. Catherine suggested that the girls might enjoy seeing Charlotte's private art studio, a suggestion that was met with immediate enthusiasm for both children. As they made their way through the palace corridors, Charlotte proudly pointed out various portraits and artifacts, explaining their historical significance with the kind of detailed knowledge that impressed the Japanese visitors. Yuki, in turn, shared stories about similar artifacts in Japanese palaces, creating a fascinating comparison between Eastern and Western royal traditions. The art studio revealed another dimension of Charlotte's personality. Her paintings and drawings covered the walls, showing a range of subjects from family portraits to landscapes to abstract experiments with color and form. Yuki examined each piece with the careful attention of someone who understood artistic effort, offering thoughtful comments that showed she appreciated both technique and creativity. When Yuki mentioned that she also loved to paint, Charlotte immediately suggested they create something together. The idea of a collaborative artwork excited both girls, and they quickly decided to paint a picture that would represent their new friendship. Charlotte gathered supplies while Yuki carefully considered what symbols might best represent the bridge between their two cultures. Their joint painting began with a simple landscape that could have been from either England or Japan. They added elements that were meaningful to each of them. Charlotte painted a small horse running through green fields, while Yuki added cherry blossoms and a traditional Japanese bridge. The result was a unique piece of art that truly represented the blending of their two worlds. As they worked on their painting, the girls' conversation turned to deeper topics. Charlotte asked thoughtful questions about what it was like to live in different countries, and Yuki shared her experiences of adapting to new schools and making friends in unfamiliar places. Charlotte, who had never lived anywhere but England, was fascinated by stories of different customs and traditions. Their parents, who had been discussing more formal diplomatic matters in the main reception room, gradually found their conversation shifting to more personal topics as well. Ambassador Tanaka shared stories about the challenges of raising children in the diplomatic world, while Prince William and Catherine discussed their efforts to provide normal childhoods for their children despite their royal status. The afternoon was producing exactly the kind of meaningful cultural exchange that diplomats spend years trying to achieve, but it was happening naturally through the genuine friendship developing between two 8-year-old girls. The adults recognized that they were witnessing something rare and special, a reminder that the best diplomacy often happens at the human level rather than through formal protocols. When the girls finished their collaborative painting, they proudly presented it to their parents. The artwork was charming in its childish technique, but profound in its symbolism. It represented not just a friendship between two children, but a bridge between two cultures, created through understanding, respect, and genuine affection. Ambassador Tanaka suggested that the painting should be photographed and perhaps displayed in both the Japanese embassy and Kensington Palace as a symbol of the friendship between their countries. The idea was met with enthusiasm from everyone present, and plans were immediately made to have the artwork professionally preserved. As the formal part of the afternoon was drawing to a close, neither Charlotte nor Yuki wanted their time together to end. They had exchanged contact information, with plans to continue their friendship through letters and emails. Charlotte promised to send Yuki photos of the palace horses, while Yuki offered to teach Charlotte some Japanese phrases through video calls. The success of the afternoon had exceeded everyone's expectations. What had begun as a routine diplomatic meeting had evolved into a genuine cultural exchange that would have lasting impact on everyone involved. Charlotte had demonstrated that age was no barrier to effective diplomacy when it was approached with genuine curiosity and respect for others. The photographer had been quietly documenting the afternoon's events, capturing candid moments of genuine interaction between the two families. However, it was the final formal photograph that would become iconic. As the Japanese delegation prepared to depart, both families gathered in the palace's grand entrance hall for the traditional commemorative photo that marks the conclusion of important diplomatic visits. Charlotte and Yuki stood in the center of the group, flanked by their parents and other members of the diplomatic party. The photographer, experienced in capturing formal royal occasions, was expecting the usual stiff poses and ceremonial expressions. Instead, he found himself witnessing something entirely different and far more powerful. As the photographer prepared to take the shot, Charlotte spontaneously reached out and took Yuki's hand once again. This time, however, the gesture carried even more significance. It wasn't just a friendly handshake between two children, but a symbol of international friendship and cultural understanding. The two girls stood confidently, their joined hands representing a bridge between East and West, between tradition and modernity, between formal diplomacy and human connection. Yuki's response was equally natural and meaningful. Instead of simply accepting the handshake passively, she turned slightly toward Charlotte and smiled with genuine warmth and affection. The photographer captured this moment perfectly, creating an image that would soon become one of the most beloved royal photographs of the modern era. The photograph showed more than just two well-dressed children at a formal event. It captured the essence of what diplomacy could be at its best: genuine, warm, respectful, and hopeful. The image radiated the kind of positive energy that reminded viewers why cultural exchange and international friendship were so important in an increasingly connected world. After the formal photographs were completed, the farewell process began. But instead of the quick, formal goodbyes that typically mark the end of diplomatic meetings, Charlotte and Yuki's parting was genuinely emotional. They had formed a real friendship in just a few hours, and both girls were clearly reluctant to say goodbye. Ambassador Tanaka approached Prince William and Catherine to express his genuine gratitude for the afternoon. He explained that in his 30 years of diplomatic service, he had rarely experienced such a successful cultural exchange. He was particularly impressed by Charlotte's natural diplomatic instincts and her genuine curiosity about Japanese culture. Mrs. Tanaka, speaking in careful but excellent English, told Catherine that Yuki had been nervous about the meeting, but was now talking excitedly about all the things she wanted to share with Charlotte in their future correspondence. The afternoon had clearly made a strong impression on both children, creating the foundation for what would undoubtedly be a long-lasting friendship. As the Japanese delegation's cars prepared to depart, Charlotte and Yuki exchanged final hugs and promises to stay in touch. Charlotte gave Yuki a small gift she had quickly chosen from her room, a beautiful bookmark featuring a photo of one of the palace horses. Yuki, in return, presented Charlotte with a traditional Japanese friendship bracelet that she had been wearing, explaining that it would help Charlotte remember their special day together. The cars pulled away from Kensington Palace as the sun began to set, leaving Charlotte standing at the window of the entrance hall, waving until the vehicles disappeared from view. Her parents stood beside her, both moved by their daughter's obvious emotional investment in the afternoon's events. That evening, as the palace staff cleaned up from the day's events and normal routines resumed, Charlotte sat in her room, writing in her diary about the afternoon's experiences. She wrote about how nervous she had been initially, how quickly she and Yuki had become friends, and how much she was looking forward to learning more about Japanese culture through their continued correspondence. Prince William and Catherine discussed the day's events over dinner, both agreeing that Charlotte had exceeded their expectations in every way. Her natural grace, genuine curiosity, and instinctive understanding of the importance of the occasion had contributed to what was clearly a very successful diplomatic encounter. The photographs from the afternoon were reviewed that evening by the palace communications team. When they saw the image of Charlotte and Yuki's handshake, they immediately recognized its potential significance. The photograph perfectly captured the spirit of international cooperation and friendship that the royal family wanted to promote. However, before any photographs could be released to the public, careful consideration had to be given to privacy concerns, particularly regarding Yuki, who was not a public figure like Charlotte. Ambassador Tanaka was consulted and gave his enthusiastic permission for the photographs to be shared, understanding their potential positive impact on Japanese-British relations. The decision was made to release one carefully selected photograph, along with a brief statement about the successful cultural exchange meeting. The palace communications team crafted a statement that emphasized the importance of cultural understanding and the natural diplomatic skills demonstrated by both children. As Charlotte prepared for bed that night, she was already making plans for maintaining her friendship with Yuki. She wanted to learn more Japanese phrases, research more about Japanese history and culture, and perhaps even plan a visit to Japan someday. The afternoon had sparked what would become a lifelong interest in international relations and cultural exchange. The photograph was released to the public 3 days after the meeting, accompanied by a carefully crafted statement from Kensington Palace about the successful cultural exchange visit. Within hours, the image had spread across social media platforms worldwide, generating an unprecedented positive response from royal watchers, diplomatic communities, and ordinary people who were touched by the genuine warmth displayed by both children. News outlets from London to Tokyo picked up the story, but rather than focusing on protocol or political implications, journalists found themselves writing about the power of childhood friendship to bridge cultural divides. The photograph became a symbol of hope and positive international relations at a time when global politics often seemed dominated by conflict and division. Charlotte woke up the next morning to discover that she had become an international sensation overnight. Her parents carefully explained to her that people around the world were talking about her meeting with Yuki, but they emphasized that the attention was positive and focused on the friendship she had helped create. Charlotte listened with interest, but didn't fully understand the scope of the response until she saw some of the news coverage herself. The Japanese media response was particularly enthusiastic. Major newspapers in Tokyo featured the photograph on their front pages, with headlines celebrating the warm welcome Yuki had received at Kensington Palace. Japanese social media users shared the image thousands of times, often adding comments about how the photograph made them feel proud of their country's friendship with Britain. Back at Lambert School, Charlotte found herself at the center of attention from classmates who had seen the news coverage. Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, used Charlotte's experience as a teaching moment, leading a class discussion about different cultures and the importance of international friendship. Charlotte was happy to share what she had learned about Japanese culture, though she remained modest about her own role in the diplomatic success. The ripple effects of the photograph extended far beyond social media and news coverage. Educational organizations in both Britain and Japan began developing new cultural exchange programs inspired by Charlotte and Yuki's friendship. Several schools proposed pen pal programs that would connect British and Japanese children using Charlotte and Yuki's relationship as a model for cross-cultural understanding. Ambassador Tanaka reported back to Tokyo that the meeting had exceeded all expectations and had generated more positive coverage for Japanese-British relations than any diplomatic event in recent memory. The Japanese Foreign Ministry was so pleased with the results that they began planning expanded cultural exchange programs, specifically including opportunities for young people to interact across cultural boundaries. Yuki, meanwhile, had become something of a celebrity at her international school in London. Her classmates were fascinated by her stories about visiting Kensington Palace and meeting Princess Charlotte. She shared Charlotte's bookmark with pride and talked enthusiastically about their plans to continue their friendship through letters and video calls. True to their promises, Charlotte and Yuki began corresponding regularly. Their letters, written in a mixture of English and simple Japanese phrases, covered topics ranging from school experiences to cultural observations to shared interests in art and animals. Charlotte's Japanese vocabulary expanded rapidly as she worked to communicate with her new friend in her native language. The success of the meeting also had professional implications for the adults involved. Ambassador Tanaka's handling of the cultural exchange was praised by his superiors, and he was commended for creating an environment where such genuine connection could flourish. Prince William and Catherine received positive feedback from both the British government and international diplomatic communities for their approach to involving their daughter in meaningful cultural exchange. 6 months after their first meeting, Charlotte and Yuki's friendship had grown stronger through their regular correspondence. They had shared photos of their daily lives, taught each other games from their respective cultures, and even collaborated on another art project that they completed by mailing pieces back and forth between London and Tokyo. The photograph continued to circulate on social media, often shared during discussions about positive international relations or the importance of cultural understanding. It had become an iconic image that people returned to when they wanted to remember that friendship and cooperation were possible across all boundaries. Charlotte's interest in international relations had grown significantly since her meeting with Yuki. She began asking more questions about other countries and cultures, and her parents arranged for her to meet children from various diplomatic families living in London. Each meeting built on the lessons she had learned from her friendship with Yuki about approaching cultural differences with curiosity and respect. The long-term impact of that afternoon at Kensington Palace was still unfolding. Charlotte had discovered a genuine passion for cultural exchange that would influence her future royal duties. She had learned that diplomacy at its best was about human connection rather than formal protocol, and that genuine curiosity and respect could overcome any cultural barrier. As Charlotte grew older, she would often look back on that April afternoon as a turning point in her understanding of her role as a member of the royal family. The handshake with Yuki had taught her that even small gestures of friendship could have far-reaching positive effects, and that the most meaningful diplomacy often happened in the simplest moments of human connection. The story of Princess Charlotte's diplomatic handshake became a reminder that in a world often divided by differences, children could lead the way in showing adults how natural and beneficial international friendship could be. It proved that genuine curiosity, respect, and kindness were the most powerful diplomatic tools of all, and that sometimes the most important bridges between cultures were built not in formal meetings, but in the spontaneous moment when one child reaches out to another in friendship.